My name is Brianna, and I welcome you to the Tales of Adventure, a D&D podcast like no other.
My name is RJ Cresswell, and I play Röva Brasdreki, a chaotic good, level 20 mountain dwarf who's an illusionist smuggler from the Ölketill clan. And I play that not on a stream or on a podcast. It's just kind of like a local game that I have with some friends. But you can find me being the dungeon master for the Grimwood Saga, which is kind of like my quirky D&D 5th edition actual play stream. And you can find that on twitch.tv/RJ Cresswell. That's CRESSWELL. In addition to that, you can find me on Twitter at RJ_Cresswell, where I just post a lot about D&D. I am a teacher. I run a D&D club. Last year, my D&D club had over 50 students. I probably introduced 100 and something students to D&D, and it's pretty fun. I really enjoy the game.
Hey guys, Brianna here with a quick message for all of you lovely members of the TTRPG community. We have a group of friends who needs your help. Go on Twitter and check out Homebrew Queens at Homebrew Queens and see what you can do to help these lovely ladies bring their father back to the table. Let's show them what community is all about. And I don't think that alcohol is going to drink itself, especially not if you keep staring at it.
You know, you're probably right. It's been a little while since I've had a drink. Would you care to join me?
Sure, you look like you could use someone to talk to. You've got a lot going on in your mind.
You know, you're not exactly wrong about that. Yeah, please take a seat, and if you will permit me, I'll order a drink for you. Barkeep, if you don't mind, could you bring over what would you have actually?
I'll take a minute and put it on my tab.
All right. Who are you, by the way?
My name is Isra. And you are?
Isra. I am Röva Brasdreki. Pleased to meet your acquaintance.
Pleasure to meet you as well. I believe I've heard of that name before.
You know, it's possible. I don't consider myself much of a braggart, but I am somewhat, some might call a hero, perhaps, you know. I've done things here or there that have led people to be fairly gracious towards me. You know, I've been kind of running around all over the realms trying to warn people. I'm actually kind of a little bit on a mission to save the world here, you know, if you can believe that.
Actually, part of why I'm here. I'm not a big fan of worlds ending, so I like to come and see what's going on, who's there trying to save it, and what I can do to help.
Well, you know, that's a little bit relieving to hear. You kind of had me a little nervous there for a bit when you said that's why you're here. You know, it seems like everywhere I go, there's someone that wants to end my life. And, you know, I try to talk to them most of the time, and I tell them, you know, you don't want to do that because everyone who tries this, you know, winds up dead. So, you know, I don't like making threats against people and things like that, but I like to let them know, you know, who they're messing with here. It's not a wise move. So, you know, it's good to hear that you're not here for that the reason. So I appreciate that. It'd be nice to just have a drink for once, I think.
I have no intention of killing you, though the fact that many do is a good sign that you're doing the hero thing right.
Yeah, I guess so. You know, it kind of started a while ago, actually. It must be years at this point. It's... You know, I'm not so sure if you're familiar with the Cultists of the Void, but they are a pretty persistent lot. I guess it could have to do with the fact that I have been persistent in trying to foil their plots and schemes. So I guess we're probably thorns in one another's side, more or less. But yeah, they just they show up here and they're bringing along their foul and fell minions, and it's much to deal with, very much to deal with.
So, how did you get started on this journey?
Well, I'm kind of originally from the spine of the world, if you know that the region, up in the Frost Hills, kind of near the fourth peak, a place called Mithril Hall. My family's from there. We're all part of the Ölketill clan, and my family, they're really brewers by trade. And, I grew up learning that trade, and, it is a very honorable and decent trade, but I kind of wanted to get out and see the world a little bit. And I've always been told I'm kind of a likable fella. So, they just sort of sent me out as kind of like a salesperson, just to kind of like go and push our Steel Shield Stout out to different areas in the realms. And, I just kind of I started with that, just kind of going here and there, trying to get the various inns and taverns to stock this Steel Shield Stout. And eventually I kind of made my way to Waterdeep, which is a pretty lovely city if you discount the fact that they are very particular in the way that things are done there. And I kind of ran a little bit afoul of the Brewers Guild there. And, they just don't really take kindly to you coming in and trying to hawk, various ales and stouts and what have you, without going through them, and gotten a little bit of legal trouble. And I guess things just kind of went a little sideways there because, I don't know, people started throwing around words like smuggler and stuff like that. And, I just never really considered myself much of a criminal, actually, but Waterdeep was a fairly profitable place. And I mean, who can turn down those dragons,
That's true. That's very difficult to turn down a dragon. Tend to get angry when you try.
Right. But being that we're kind of in Callanport right here, I don't know if you're familiar, but over in Waterdeep, they have these coins, and they're made of gold, and they call them the dragons. So, talking about the gold, actually, is just too profitable to give up on. So I kept bringing in the Steel Shield Stout, and again, just kind of ran a little bit afoul of the law. But eventually, I just decided that things were getting a little too hot there. So I kind of just started traveling a little bit more. And eventually I found myself in a place called Long Saddle, trying to, seek out some opportunities there, getting more business for the family business, as it were. And wasn't there for long. And they had some issues with this. And this time I am really actually talking about the dragon, this kind of a much younger dragon. Actually, it's pretty similar to my friend over here, Asker. Younger red dragon, not nearly as pleasant as Asker is here, but really just kind of coming in, demanding tribute, injuring people and what have you. And I just banded together with some of the locals, and I'm from up near Mithril Hall, and pretty much everybody knows how to swing a warhammer there. So we just kind of defeated this dragon. It perished, and I even kept a little keepsake from it. This little thing around my neck here is actually a vial of Red's dragon's blood. And I spent a little more time in Long Saddle, and I met this man named Olin Harple. And, he recognized my prowess with the Warhammer, but also said he saw something else, an intelligence in my eyes. And he began kind of training me in the way of his family's arts. And he was an illusionist. They called him Olin the Illusionist. And I just began kind of studying with him. I could already read and write and things like that. And he began teaching me various runes and sigils, and we started off with some fairly simple spells, and eventually he recognized the promise in me, and we continued the training, and well, one thing led to another, and I became a wizard.
I did notice you have the magical air about you. Also, your companions kind of gave that away.
All right, yes. As I mentioned already, my little dragon friend here, that's Asker, and this is Chloe. Chloe is a griffin, but Chloe is a little bit different. Chloe actually is kind of a magical creature. I can call her forth. I have this little figurine. It's brass, and it looks just like her. And I speak a word, and it actually turns into a griffin. When I come into a place like this, I like to kind of surround myself with protection because, as I said, people tend to seek me out to do me harm. And currently, my other friends are not here right now. This big fellow over here, he's what some call a shield guardian. I call him Steffi. He's saved my hide on more than one occasion. You can better believe that. And, I know it's not entirely polite to have animals at the table, but never mind Alga here. Alga's just going to sit here eating their peanuts.
I don't mind at all.
All right, well, that's good to know. It's good to know.
Just as long as it keeps in mind that my finger is not the peanut.
Right. Well, as I mentioned with Chloe, Alga's another kind of a magical creature, and they don't actually need to eat. They just kind of like to do it. So I don't think they're going to bother you at all,
It's good. So you mentioned there's world-ending events going on. You've mentioned about the cult. How did you first get involved with fighting them?
Well, I guess that story kind of goes back a little while too, kind of after I did this training with Olin Harville, eventually I met up with one of my older friends from back in Mithril Hall. He goes by the name of Quint Jr. He's a pretty nice fella. He's a warrior, a performer. Got a little bit of some anger issues, but more or less a fairly nice guy. And we just kind of began traveling together. We'd kind of go from place to place earning coin. He'd do some performing, feats of strength, fighting people, things like that. I'd continue, again, people use the word smuggling. I call it entrepreneurship. And I'd continue, making some coin by getting our stout here and there. And we just went around from place to place. And eventually, we just kind of recruited a few others to join us. There's Whisper. Whisper looks a good bit like Alga there, but bigger, more like a person. They're pretty good with fighting people without the weapons. Really good for protection, actually.
Pretty good, because when you're unarmed, it helps to have someone who can fight that way.
Exactly, yes. And Whisper's really pretty good at it. And then there's Aradin. He's a pretty nice elfish fella. He's a bit of a woodsman, pretty capable when it comes to kind of like tracking and getting about through the wilderness and things like that. And basically, we just kind of started our own convoy service. We just kind of put ourselves out there for like protecting caravans. We called ourselves the Wagon Guard. And we just picked up jobs here and there, and there's a good bit of coin to be made in that, especially when people have valuable things that they're trying to transport from village to hamlet or city or town or things like that. They're willing to pay some pretty good coin.
That they are. Definitely good if you're running a little low. Run one of those jobs, then you have food, some shelter, and it's a good way to make money, and it's pretty quick sometimes, depending on where you're going.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it definitely led us places. It was so profitable that at some point we bought ourselves our own inn, called it the Leering Star, and we kind of got pretty invested in it, but then our travels just continued taking us further. Prior to that happening, though, I met a very nice woman, Helgrit. She became my wife. We have a little bitty baby, Rufa, but his name is Gimgren. And anyway, my wife was a silversmith by trade, and eventually just kind of like took over the tavern for us as we continued on doing our convoy work. Eventually, that led us to a place called Phandalin. And in Phandalin, we were working for this fella who had us transporting some magical goods, some goods of a magical nature. And we just kind of got wrapped up in this thing where the town master, we had discovered that they were taken captive. And not only were they taken captive, they were taken captive along with our benefactor. And, fortunately, we were able to save the town master. Unfortunately, our benefactor perished. We were not able to save him in time. Turns out he had been captured by these cultists of the void. And they had sacrificed him. Now, our benefactor was a magical person by nature, a gnomish wizard by the name of Fizbin, and they'd ended up sacrificing him to call forth some minions, some things that were unspeakable horrors, tentacles and ichor and dead eyes everywhere. Nasty business, really, if you can believe it.
Sounds like an absolute nightmare. I'm sorry you lost someone you were close to for that.
Right, it was absolutely horrible, and the things, again, I could not even begin to describe them in the way where you could actually imagine how terrible they were, but we did end up felling the ones who were summoned. But since then, me and my compatriots have kind of gotten wrapped up in foiling this cult of the void. We kind of followed them here and there, searching for different leads, and eventually made our way to this place called Luskin. Did some research there. Found out there's this thing called the Arcane Brotherhood, and, well, the Arcane Brotherhood is not really part of this plot, but one of their members had gone rogue. She's a woman by the name of Lysora Bloodwine.
That's an interesting last name.
I thought so as well, but even more interesting is the person. Interesting for how horrible they were, actually. Responsible for many murders and deaths related to this cult, as they're trying to harness some kind of power by bringing forth the god of the void to the prime material plane.
That's a terrible idea.
I thought it was a terrible idea too. Pretty darn terrible, I do believe. And I'm not going to invoke their name here. We'll just call them the unnamed or the unspoken, because every time we've seemed to have invoked their name, someone shows up and means us harm, as I've mentioned. So we've learned to kind of not to speak anything about them. But we've kind of been on this trail to foil them from bringing this god to our realm.
It's a thing to work towards. People bringing back gods is never a good sign. It's always a giant pain in the ass.
Yeah, well, it's been that for me pretty much, I'm a dwarf, as you can tell, and I'm from Mithril, and we venerate more than there. And I know the gods exist because by this point I've met a couple. And I wouldn't call myself a religious man. Like I said, I know they exist, but most of them they're pretty much jerks.
You're not wrong. It's like they say, never to meet your heroes. It's true with the gods.
Right. I've never met Moradin yet. Perhaps Moradin is pretty great, I don't know. But the ones I've met, they've not been so great. Mostly due to their indifference. I can't believe that you could really speak to a god that's not evil, and they don't really care anything about, our reality or our world being changed, for the worst. It's kind of disheartening to hear that your gods have more or less abandoned you, and you're left to your own devices to kind of save it as you will or won't.
Like they lose perspective, they forget what it is like, and I guess as far as they are concerned, the world has changed, so as long as there's still someone there to worship him, they don't care, and it's not like anything can hurt them. At least as far as they're concerned.
Well, they might take that opinion, but I've kind of learned that gods can be hurt as well. They're not completely omnipotent. I'm here in Calimporta because we've gone into the Kalim Desert once already, and we plan to return there again. First time we ventured out into the Kalim Desert, we sought out the Sphinx by the name of Brasdreki. And we were trying to kind of figure out what is one way, what is one weapon, what is one thing that we could do to defeat this god of the void. And Brasdreki did not work for free. We ended up having to undertake a quest to retrieve feathers from a dark phoenix. She sent us across time and space, into the void, actually. And we defeated this creature and brought it back, and we learned that within the Kalim Desert, there's a place known as the Temple of Bones. And within the Temple of Bones, there resides the body, the remains of a former hero known as Minios. And we're to go there to extract the essence of Minios. It seems that once upon a time, Minios had also tangled with this void god and defeated them, though not slew them. So apparently, if we can retrieve this essence of Minios, it will empower us to fight this god and defeat it, perhaps. And that is where you join me now, on the eve of setting out for the Temple of Bones with my compatriots, to see if we can find Minios and retrieve their essence for defeating this god.
You've got quite the task ahead of you. Are there no others aside from you and your friends seeking to stop this god?
No, none others that I know, and it's not for lack of trying. Again, we have appealed to various deities and celestials, not to mention going from Waterdeep to Tribor to just all of these various places, trying to raise the alarm with people and let them know this horrible thing is about to fall upon the Faerûn. And it's almost as if, you go tell someone that an evil god is about to invade the world and just really wreak a lot of havoc. They look at you kind of like you're crazy and don't believe you very much,
An unfortunate reality. Most people have strange beliefs when it comes to the gods, and they refuse to believe the world is in danger until it's literally on fire around them.
Right. Well, I believe that people are beginning to, wake up a little bit. I mean, I'm sure you've noticed the changes recently. Something has happened. Something has shifted. The world is taking on more muted tones, and there's a bit more depression, and people just don't seem to have very much of this lust or zeal for life anymore, It's been that way for a little bit, and I know that some recognize that something's wrong. They're just not quite sure what it is. But I'm convinced that it has to do with these cultists and this void god.
Yes, when the void starts taking over, as voids do, they suck everything in. They destroy and consume everything.
Right. Which brings me back to my mission at hand and why you find me here. I'm at a loss. I mean, I know what we have to do. But what does it mean when you defeat a god? If that happens, I have a wife, I have a child. Do I return to them? Or am I forever lost in this void? I don't know what's going to happen. I'm a pretty positive thinker, I think, but even this pall that has come across the world is falling over me as well.
You are one of the few that truly knows the stakes and what could be lost. It makes sense that you're feeling this way. No easy thing to go up against something so vast and so unknown and have no idea what could become of you and those you cared about.
Right, and that's what you find me here thinking about, The positive thing is, the more of this ale that I have, the better that I feel going into this battle, perhaps even as soon as tomorrow. So, I've spoken a good bit about myself, and I feel that's it's kind of rude. You've been very nice to listen to me ramble on to my story. What was it again that brought you here?
I heard that there's a possibility of the world ending, and I have to come make sure that doesn't happen. I've seen what happens when something comes to destroy the world and people don't stand up in time. So I'm glad to have met you, because you and your friends here already, you've been fighting to save the world for probably longer than you may realize. So there may be hope for this world.
Well, I do certainly hope so. We've got a bit of a plan. I've fought many things before, many strange, unusual, and horrible things. I've never quite tangled with a god. Have tangled with some of their minions. I've even tangled with celestials if they tried to impede us before in our mission. But I do have hope. The people that I travel with, they're a bit rough around the edges, but they are very capable in the things that they do. And we have a plan. And as I said, in spite of everything that's going on, and me feeling a little bit dejected, I am optimistic. I'm positive, and I think that we will come through this yet.
I'm sure you will, because I imagine you all have a lot to fight for.
We do. I mean, as I mentioned, I do have my wife and my child, and as I said earlier, I speak pretty plainly. Over my travels, I've become a fairly wealthy individual, and my wife, my child, and my business is it's a lot that I would like to hold on to.
Imagine so. And I'm sure you will be able to, once you save the world and all.
Yes. I suppose it couldn't hurt to invoke a god in spite of the things that I've said about the ones that I have met so far. So let's raise a tankard and perhaps toast and hope that I have Moradin's blessing upon this eve of battle.
I can agree to that. So I couldn't help but notice something. I didn't know if you were going to mention it, but I'm more perceptive than most when it comes to magic. Part of your story I'd be interested to hear. You can probably guess what it is.
Well, yeah, I think that I might have an idea. You seem like a fairly perceptive individual, and certainly, and please don't take this. I hope I'm not being impolite, but much stranger than most that I have met before.
I've been called worse.
Keen on certain details. Yes, as I mentioned, I am a wizard. I'm not just a wizard. I've grown to be a pretty powerful wizard. And, I set out learning illusions thinking that they might help me, fool authorities here and there. But I could not have imagined that when I began training with Olin Harple, that I would learn how to reshape reality to a certain extent. I learned one spell that allows me to change a person or a thing's form. And, again, I hate if anyone would consider me a braggart, but I am quite literally not just a Röva Brasdreki, a mountain dwarf. I'm quite literally an ancient brass dragon. Now, I didn't start out as a dragon, but I learned how to take their form, and I've acquired it, and it's become kind of a permanent thing, and I've used it in battle, and it's very powerful. Fortunately, however, I don't have to remain that way. They possess an ability that allows them to kind of shape change. So, this form is pretty comfortable to me. It's what I've lived in for all of my life, really, until recently. But yes, if that's what you're talking about, not just a mere dwarvish fella here. I'm quite literally a dragon. Very big dragon.
Not every day I get to have a conversation with an ancient Brasdreki who wasn't born an ancient Brasdreki.
Right.
Pretty so. How does your wife feel about this?
Well, my travels have kind of taken me far afield from my family, and I haven't actually been able to let her know this yet. So I'm not sure how she's going to feel about it. I guess if I save the world and this helps, she's probably going to be pretty okay with it, more or less. And the fact that I can look like myself, I mean, I don't have to walk around like a dragon. I can stay like this pretty much all the time. But yeah, I don't really know how she feels yet. We'll see. We'll have that conversation, hopefully, sometime soon. It's not so much her that I'm worried about, but little Gimgren. He's a pretty young fella still. I don't know that he is gonna comprehend that his daddy is a dragon.
Honestly, if you can comprehend it, you're going to become the coolest dad ever in his eyes. Not only did you save the world for the dragon.
Right, it's a pretty good story when you think about it. I hope that I get to tell it to little Gimren soon.
I'm sure you will. So, what is this plan of yours that you have for you're going to destroy the god that is trying to destroy the world?
Well, throughout our travels, we have acquired a few items that perhaps can help us with this. My friend, the kind of bird fella, I referred to them as Whisper. They acquired this staff. Now, we have spoken to some scholars who call it the Staff of the Magi, and it contains very powerful magics within it. And the scholar that we spoke to about this told us that you can use this staff to call forth the many spells to aid you, but if the staff were ever to get broken, it would result potentially in a very powerful explosion. And they also said that the staff is limited in its power. Once you've used the spells, they're gone. And the more spells that this staff has stored inside of it, the more powerful it is if it were to be broken. So our plan, more or less, is to break this staff upon this god, unleashing whatever power it might hold. And beyond that, we've done a little bit of research on this god, and we've kind of learned sort of how it fights and the methods it uses. And one of my other friends, the ranger that I was speaking about, Eredin, is in possession of a luck blade. And, I always grew up hearing about wishes, and I didn't really believe it till I became a wizard. And if you can believe it or not, this is an ability that I have. I can grant wishes. But what we hope to do is in battle, we hope to use one of those wishes to make us immune to the attacks of this god, so that we're protected by it. We hope to break the staff upon it. And then beyond that, I've learned this very powerful spell where I can capture someone within kind of this prismatic field. And it has a field of fire and lightning and force, and every layer that you pass through wreaks unspeakable damage upon your body. So we hope to break this staff, make this wish, and encapsulate it, and hold it still as we unleash what remaining force we have upon it. So
Sounds like a very solid plan there.
It is a plan. It's something to work with. And I do feel confident about it. Again, we've been traveling together for, like I said, at this point, it's years. And one thing that I know about my compatriots, they're made of stern stuff. And we've fallen before, but none of us have been slain. So I got to think that we made it to this point for a reason, you know? Faith is not a thing that I particularly believed in, but something has brought us here.
It has a funny way of directing your steps even when you don't believe in it. Also has a really good sense of humor.
No kidding.
Hey, perhaps tomorrow you save the world and then the day after you celebrate and then you return home and tell your wife and son the story. Thought about what you'll do once the world has been saved.
If we are able to save the world, and I think we will. I think at that point I will have earned a good bit of a respite. It's been a while since I've seen my wife and my child, and I intend to return to them and perhaps put my staff up and hang my robe and enjoy time with them. Perhaps maybe even spend a little time working in the tavern with my wife. That sounds like it could be pleasant. And I'm sure that, at some point I will go restless again. But I've seen much of the world and I've experienced many things. I will be content, I think, to be still for a while, to be home for a while. Perhaps to make a home for a while. I have my family, but I can't say that I ever really settled there. It would be nice to make a home.
Well, when you go into the fight tomorrow, remember that. Remember what you're fighting for. I'm sure you will be victorious. With or without the gods' help. Hopefully with. About time I try to actually do something useful for once.
Yes, hopefully it will be with their help, but if not, we will be there. We will be there.
And you'll be there to save the world.
Yes, we will.
Rova gets up to leave and Estras just says, "This fight is going to be much easier than you realize." And when he turns around to respond, she's just gone.
Tales of Adventure is directed and produced by me, Brianna Toiber, as part of Pseudonym Social, a creative podcast network. The music is by Patrick Chester of Chester Studios. To see more of his work, visit his website at chesterstudios.net. Find out more about Pseudonym Social by visiting our website at pseudonymsocial.wordpress.com. If you like what I'm doing and would like to support this podcast, please go to patreon.com/pseudonymsocial and choose one of the tiers connected to Tales of Adventure. You can also leave a review on iTunes to make our show easier to find for those who need it.
time is valuable. Here at Dungeon Digressions, we encourage you to make every second count. Why spend minutes of your life listening to epic adventures, exploring new worlds, and getting lost in amazing story arcs and relatable character growth when you could be doing your daily routine every day, all day? Who especially wants to hear a bunch of gnomes chaotically traversing the world? They're filthy, whiny, don't understand magic, and are just seen as ugly kids.
We're not kids.
At least spend your precious moments listening to another fine podcast like this one you're currently enjoying. Good choice. And ignore this tumultuous group of gnomes guaranteeing their deathy fate. Well done. Don't listen. No matter what. DungeonDigressions.com.